What's up, everyone? It's King Moosh here with JCross to bring you all the 11th episode of the Class Overview series. For those who aren't familiar, the Class Overview series is a collection of informative videos where we're going to be discussing the different classes in Fire Emblem Three Houses.
We'll be going over general information about each class, like their certification requirements, stats, abilities, and their overall strengths and limitations that determine their viability and what units are a good fit for each class. As per usual, these videos will be gameplay focused, so there shouldn't really be any major spoilers, but I advise you anyways to watch your own discretion, and if you haven't played Three Houses yet, you absolutely should.
This episode is about the Monk class. It's a standard 4-move infantry class with no class abilities like the other beginner classes. To certify for Monk, your unit will need to have at least a D rank in Reason or a D rank in Faith. It doesn't have to be both. With the possible exception of Lorenz, any unit in the game who would want to go Monk will meet one of these rank requirements by default, since you would need to have a D rank and at least one of them to have a usable spell. As a magic-focused class, Monk not only retains access to the unit spell list upon promotion from Commoner or Noble, but notably it loses the half spell cast penalty. It does lose access to Brawling, however this isn't very important for most units who want to go into Monk. Though not quite as many as Fighter, Monk has 2 skill level bonuses, those being a +1 in Reason and Faith. While they are not going to make a huge difference, every magic unit appreciates growing faster in both those areas, and it may help you reach those crucial early game spells just a little bit earlier.
The base stats for Monk are a bit different from the previous physical beginner classes, but just like those classes, you're most likely not going to see any substantial increases, if any at all. The base HP, speed, and dex are the same as the others, while the more notable magical-oriented bases of magic and res sit at 4 and 8 respectively. As we commented on last episode, strength can be useful for magic classes given that spells have weights just like weapons. The base strength is sitting at a measly 4, however, so this is unlikely to be increased. As for the stat boost, strangely, unlike Fighter which grants a +1 to strength, Monk grants a +1 to res instead of magic. This is certainly a strange decision given the lack of major magic-oriented threats early on, and definitely is a bit of a shortcoming of the class. Taking a glance at the growth rates, unlike the physical classes granting a +10% growth to HP, Monk only grants a +5% boost while sharing the +5% boost to Charm. The unique growth modifier, again, is unfortunately res, sitting at a +5%. Although we have gone on record saying that beginner class stats really aren't that impactful and the masteries are what define them, the weird focus on res for Monk is mildly unfortunate.
Upon mastering the Monk class, your unit will receive the equipable ability Magic +2. Just like the other beginner class masteries, it does exactly what it sounds like, increasing unit's magic stat by 2. Free stats are always good, but Magic +2 stands out alongside Strength +2 as the best of the bunch. Magic units generally struggle to double on maddening for a variety of reasons, such as having middling speed growth, spells being too heavy, and not really being able to take advantage of brave weapons or combat arts for the most part. Not to mention, magic classes can't use gauntlets at all. So for the most part, you won't get as much extra damage out of Magic +2 as you will out of Strength +2, and you don't have the advantage of potentially offsetting an extra point of weapon weight by using it either, but it does have its own advantages. The extra 2 damage can honestly be very impactful on powerful heavy spells that might just barely miss out on one-shotting an enemy. Notably, increasing your magic potentially grant extra tile of range on important spells like Physic, Warp, and Rescue. Magic units generally don't get as many strong abilities as physical units do, so Magic +2 is often pretty uncontested for its ability slot, which means it arguably has better longevity than Strength +2. It's perfectly valid to keep it for the entire playthrough. Overall, Magic +2 is a really great and versatile ability that is definitely worth spending the time in Monk to pick it up. It also stacks really well with Rally Magic, which Hubert, Constance, and Ingrid can pick up really early at D Authority, and Hanneman gets it for free as his personal ability once he's recruitable.
Master Monk also grants the positional combat art of Drawback. You can use it to pull back yourself as well as an adjacent ally. This is a net move of 2 just like Reposition, however, unlike Reposition, that move is split between 2 units moving 1 tile each. Although not as strong as Reposition, being a positional combat art means Drawback will always be pretty solid, especially in the right circumstances. Generally speaking, Drawback is used defensively to pull allied units out of an enemy range after they have already spent their turn, but it can be used offensively since the net move of 2 allows both units to get closer to enemies for upcoming turns. It's nice to have, especially in the earlier chapters where movement is so limited, and it's also useful in the later chapters due to the fact that magic characters often have way less combat arts available to them, if any, and as such, Drawback's longevity is better than all of the positional combat arts in that regard. Although it does last longer, it does become much more situational, give up your turn to use it, and get no XP as the game progresses and your units get access to classes with better movement. Generally speaking, Drawback is in the middle of the pack when it comes to positional combat arts, but its ability to last so long while on builds is definitely an appealing trait.
Monk is a great class, so there's not much to talk about in terms of weaknesses. Since the stat bonuses are focused on resistance rather than magic, they're not very impactful, and is definitely among the worst of the beginner class statistically, if not the absolute worst. That's really all there is to say, but honestly that's a non-issue because the statistical differences are so small they're unlikely to have any major impact, so it's not something I really hold against the class. The mastery abilities are both really useful. Drawback might not be quite as good as reposition, but it's very versatile and has a lot of longevity. And Magic Plus 2 is just a great ability that provides a meaningful power boost in the early game and can still be a good slot filler in the late game. The most important strength of this class, uniquely among the beginner classes, is that despite not having any class abilities, it provides a significant performance increase for magic units. Doubling their spell cast compared to Common or Noble means they can contribute to battles twice as much, which not only makes battles easier, but also means they get a lot more XP, especially since they get more uses of healing spells too. This on its own makes Monk a standout among the beginner classes, since the physical ones don't provide nearly as much of a power spike.
Personally, I'm going to give a Monk a final rating of 9.5 out of 10. It is definitely the go-to beginner class for magic units, because it's the only beginner class for magic units. That alone makes it a notable class since it has no competition besides Common or Noble, which is just worse in every regard. The only thing holding it back is really the aforementioned questionable stat spread and bases, but that isn't enough to hinder it too much since at this stage of the game the stats are more or less irrelevant compared to what you actually need out of the class. The Masters are both great, and any magic unit will immediately become much more viable once they have full spell use certifying into this class. As for unit recommendations, the scope is vast since it literally just encompasses any magic unit in the game. This list generally includes Hubert, Dorothea, Linhardt, Lysithea, Marianne, Mercedes, Annette, Constance, and Happy. Lorenz can also work if you want to push him down the magic route.
As for the tier list placement, I'm going to put Monk at the bottom of S tier. It does have some weaknesses statistically, so it isn't a perfect class, but like we said throughout the beginner class videos, we don't value those too highly since the differences are minor and you stay in the beginner classes for a very short amount of time. Overall, it has the best combination of mastery abilities of the beginner classes, which is the most important factor. And the amount of time I end up with both of the mastery abilities still in my mage builds in the endgame is proof enough for me that this class deserves the title of the best beginner class. That's about all we have to say about the Monk class. If you like the video or have any thoughts of your own, please leave a like and make sure to comment.
I also recommend checking the description if you're not already subscribed to both of our channels.
This episode marks the end of the beginner classes. Stay tuned for episode 12 on JCross channel, where we'll be moving on to the first intermediate class, Lord.